Welcome back to Lantern Insights. This is going to be the first video in what's going to be a recurring series. Going to try to do once a week, just put out 5-minute deck techs on kind of a specific version of Lantern. Just highlight kind of what makes it different from the other versions, what some of the advantage and disadvantages of it are, what kind of matchups a specific version is better or worse suited to, and then just kind of be an ongoing resource on the page that'll just keep getting added to as new versions come up, new possibilities get explored. So to get into this version, to start us off, we're going to be looking at the Abzan Lantern with Ancient Stirrings. So kind of the key, I'm not going to really be talking about this package of cards here. Bridge Shredder Lantern is going to be in every version. Discard is going to be in every version. Let's focus on what's different in this deck. Obviously, we're Abzan. The main reasons here is Prismatic Ending as our removal spell. Just as one of the best removal spells, most efficient in Modern, we're going to play it. And then we're leveraging Ancient Stirrings as our main card selection. Different versions play different tutors/card selection, but this one here we're focusing on the Stirrings version. This does mean we are going to play more colorless cards than some versions do. So you're going to look at things like Haywire Might being importantly something you can get off of Urza Saga. If you look at our mana base, we do have two basics. Blood Moon is obviously very hard for this deck in any version, but hopefully some of the Field of Ruin decks are a bit less punishing in this one. Another important thing here is the use of Surgical Extraction. Because it's a bit lower to the ground with fewer tutors, this deck can struggle against some more combo-oriented or kind of big mana things that have a more explosive endgame than we do. So Surgical really targets a lot of those decks that are reliant on one card. And because we're playing Surgical Extraction, we are going to be playing Ghoulcaller's Bell in this version, as the Bell is very, it's good on turn one. You just play it, start milling, able to mill your opponent, hopefully get something good in there for Surgical. If you want to talk about which matchups this is good against, kind of one thing you'll notice is that switching versions of Lantern, I would estimate that probably the most difference you're going to see in any matchup is probably about 5 to 10%. I don't think there's really, like most of the matchups, there isn't really a way to change Lantern to have take it from a 20% to a 60% matchup. That's just not going to happen. What we're looking at is, some versions might have a 45% matchup and some versions might have a 55% matchup. This deck with Prismatic Ending, it's a lot better against the very fast decks. So decks like Murktide, Burn, Hardened Scales, those decks, it's going to really be able to answer a lot of their things efficiently. Additionally, it's usually able to get bridge down very quickly. It's not going to struggle to have bridge with cards in hand like some of the slower versions. I would say this is one of the fastest versions of Lantern, as it does usually dump its hand very quickly. That being said, given that it's one of the faster versions, it does mean that it can sometimes be a bit weaker against slower decks. So things like Amulet Titan, it has very few answers for, as it doesn't have a removal spell for Titan. Even hitting something like Dryad, still 3 mana, is a bit slower, so it's going to struggle against things like that. Tron can be another one that the Surgicals help with, but even still against Tron is a bit weak. Importantly, this version plays Inquisition of Kozilek over Duress, like some of the other versions play. Again, this version is kind of really aimed at targeting the fast, kind of low to the ground matchups that it really excels against. Another thing is playing around counter spells. Has 8 hand disruption, all of which can take any counter magic, and just being so low to the ground, it can get under other decks very efficiently. Playing bridge on 3 is very realistic with Stirrings hopefully either finding it or having it in your opener, so you don't have to worry as much about tutoring and then having it slow. In terms of having it, coming down slowly after counter spells. In terms of sideboard, obviously this is very flexible. One key card is going to be Haywire Might, and then Hushbringer, because it's a white version, we get to play Leylines. Overall, lots of flexibility in the sideboard, and yeah, that's Abzan Lantern, very good against the fast decks. It's going to struggle a bit against slower decks. Hope this has been very educational.